Technology is progressing faster than ever, with groundbreaking new ideas being explored daily, from floating farms to edge computing. Here are the 15 most incredible emerging technologies. Number 10. Spin launch. There's been a lot of focus in recent years on private space companies and their quest to develop vehicles that can take paying customers into orbit, but the reality is that, especially with the pollution that traditional spaceflight creates, these advances won't make a difference to people other than billionaires for quite some time. There is, however, a lesser-known company that's making huge strides at making space technologies far cheaper, greener, and easier to access. It's just that their focus is on satellites and not on human travel. Known as spin launch, the concept is actually rather simple, although it is, of course, extremely complicated to put into practice. Founded in 2014 and funded by large companies such as Airbus and Google, they are building a kinetic energy launch system to insert satellites into orbit. Instead of relying on chemical rockets, they have designed a vacuum-sealed centrifuge that will spin objects around before releasing them into space at speeds of up to 5,000 miles per hour. Number 9. GPS-3. Beginning in 1973 and completed in 1993, the American GPS satellite network was the first global navigation system and revolutionized the way everyone determines their location on Earth. Initially, the benefits were envisioned for militaries, but the technology has since impacted all our lives, from the way certain electronics work to sat-nav systems and location-based tracking. However, GPS has some limitations. The original 24 satellites, along with subsequent ones, don't provide perfect resolution and are only accurate within a few feet. They also don't provide full coverage around the world, as anyone who has tried to use location tracking in mountainous areas or dense urban environments will know. Furthermore, the signals are relatively simple to block, which is a constant threat for military use. There is a need for improving the system, and the technology has already been developed to do so. Number 8. Floating farms. As the world's population continues to grow, one of the biggest problems we face right now is how to produce enough food to satisfy everyone's needs. Amazingly, an estimated 30% of the global land surface is dedicated to agriculture, and a third of that is used for crops, while the remaining is used for grazing livestock. This not only restricts potential areas for inhabitation but also encourages large-scale deforestation and habitat change to create more farmland. Some companies are looking for alternatives to this, and while you may have heard of vertical farms that look to improve the yield for the same size plot of land, others are looking at far more radical solutions. One idea is the concept of floating farms, which can involve building huge complexes that sit on the surface of the ocean, can be moved to where they're needed, and crucially, are temporary. They make use of areas that wouldn't be used for anything else and turn it into a profitable commodity. Incredibly, one of these has already been in operation for several years in the port of Rotterdam in the Netherlands, where a company called Belladonna has built a floating platform designed to farm 40 muskoxen cows that are all milked by robots. By producing the product as close to the end consumers as possible, they're reducing transport costs too. They also plan to be able to install floating farms in regions that have suffered from disasters to get food production up and running far quicker than would otherwise be possible. Number 7. Edge computing. The way we use computers has changed significantly in the past few decades, and so has the way technology is designed to give us the best service. At first, everything was done on a singular device in our homes. Now, we mainly use cloud computing, whereby most activities from our emails to documents, and virtually everything else is held online, and our devices are essentially windows that grant us access to this. The problem with cloud computing, however, is that most companies rely on the infrastructure of just a few cloud providers: Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and IBM, with Amazon alone accounting for 47% of the market. Number 6. Hydrogen fuel cells. The automotive industry is going through its most significant change in living memory, with virtually every manufacturer trying to develop technologies to reduce reliance on fossil fuels. At the same time, electric and battery concepts seem to be the way forward. They certainly aren't magic bullets. There are concerns surrounding the provision of green electricity to all that need it, and our electrical grids aren't designed to handle the loads that will be required even if this was sorted. Also, batteries are relatively cumbersome for the charge they can hold. While they may be suitable for cars, they're not yet at a place where they're viable for larger trucks, ships, or planes. Another solution is needed, and the most likely candidate is hydrogen fuel. It can be produced using natural gas, nuclear power, biomass, and other renewable energies. When it's used, the only byproduct is water in the UK. A concept train has already been fitted with hydrogen cells. It's undergoing tests, while aircraft manufacturers such as Airbus see this as a far more viable target shortly than full electrification. Car companies are also looking at how it can be used. The technology is approaching the stage where it's possible across various applications. It's only a matter of time until it's commonplace. Number 5. Satellite constellations. As the cost of launching satellites into orbit reduces and with the improvement in component design and the potential uses of space technology, several big tech companies are now exploring the feasibility of creating their satellite constellations. The idea of a network of satellites to perform a role isn't exactly new. After all, there are already 6 different navigational satellite constellations like GPS and a number of one-way and two-way communication satellite constellations. But these have traditionally only used a few dozen nodes to operate. Recently, SpaceX has been creating a constellation of its own called Starlink, which will, when it's completed, provide internet access across most of the planet. Amazingly, this involves positioning as many as 12,000 in orbit to give optimal coverage. And while the company may be paving the way, it's not the only organization looking at doing this. Boeing, OneWeb, and Amazon are also looking to develop their own constellations to provide internet access. And this is just scratching the surface of what they can be used for. If you look up when it's dark, you might just be able to see some of these satellites already. And if progress continues at the current rate, the night sky may soon be full of them. Number 4. GPT-3. Tech companies worldwide are racing to develop the first fully artificial intelligence. Still, there are steps along the way that will arguably be far more impactful on the technology around us and how we live our lives. One of these concepts is the idea of deep learning, whereby computer algorithms can analyze past behavior and automatically find solutions to improve performance. One of the most exciting forms of this is called GPT-3, developed by OpenAI. It's the 3rd generation of a language prediction model. The idea is that, based on learning by itself, it can write text the same way as a human does. It's one of the most challenging types of human imitation. This latest attempt is almost unbelievable. Based on initial studies, it's virtually impossible to differentiate between something written by GPT-3 or by an actual person. Companies like Microsoft have already begun to incorporate it into their products. It has been described recently as being one of the most exciting and essential AI systems ever produced. GPT-3 will further blur the lines of reality. You may well find yourself reading news articles or even novels that haven't had any human involvement whatsoever. Number 3. Lithium metal battery. There's a focus right now on moving away from energy sources that produce emissions. One of the best ways to achieve this is by converting everything we use to run on electricity, as long as the electricity comes from green sources. Significant strides have been made in the past couple of decades, but one of the most significant limiting factors is the capability of batteries. The most reliable and cost-effective design is a lithium-ion battery, but these batteries have limitations when it comes to how much they can charge and how quickly they can be charged. There are also concerns about their safety if they are damaged. A company called QuantumScape is developing an alternative to lithium-ion batteries. Instead of having liquid parts like a lithium-ion battery, their design is solid and is known as a lithium metal battery. The results from the company's early tests have suggested that these batteries could eventually increase the range of an electric vehicle by as much as 80% and can be recharged in just a fraction of the time. Currently, the prototypes are too large to be fitted to cars, but they're expected to become much smaller in the coming years. So much so that QuantumScape has already signed an agreement with Volkswagen VW to start selling electric vehicles with the new batteries from 2025. Number 2. 3D printing. 3D printing has had a varied history since it first started being used in the 1980s, and even until recently, it has only been helpful for particular tasks. Essentially, it involves feeding liquefied material into a chamber and applying layer upon layer to create a 3D object. It's a technique that's mostly known for creating small plastic objects or replacement components for specific devices. As our understanding of materials has improved, though, 3D printers are increasingly able to make objects out of different substances and are becoming seen as potentially the future of manufacturing, from clothing and food to medical devices, and the ability to rapidly prototype new designs. The possibilities are endless, but perhaps the most exciting area is how it'll change large projects. There are already several buildings around the world that have been built from 3D printed parts, and this is going to become even more common. Instead of needing to ship all of the different types of bricks and other parts needed to build a house, all that's needed is a supply of the primary material, a printer, and everything can be manufactured on site. It'll reduce transport needs, wastage, and increase efficiency, and could mean new homes can be built at a fraction of the time they currently take. Number 1. Blockchain. There are two main reactions when people hear about blockchain. They start telling you about the best new cryptocurrencies to invest in, or switch off from boredom. The fact is, though, that while blockchain technology does underpin the operation of these new decentralized currencies, this is just the beginning of how valuable and integrated into our lives it will become. Put simply, a blockchain is a list of information linked together by a cryptographic technique, and once a block has been added, it can't be changed and acts as a permanent record. To begin with, this was used to prove who owns a particular currency coin or, more recently, pieces of digital art. Still, several companies are exploring how much more comprehensive the uses are. There are examples of how blockchain is being used to enable energy trading and various other transactions. Still, perhaps the most critical use is tracking the history of individual products. The food industry can benefit hugely by proving where and when ingredients were harvested or cooked. Brands will also be able to use blockchain to prove whether an item is an original or a forgery. One of the more interesting things about quantum computers is that they won't always be the better choice, and researchers are still exploring the situations when they will offer an advantage.